increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical. Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview.
The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, it is Thursday, November 7th, and the right, of course, is basking in the phenomenal victory of the comeback story of Donald Trump. And the left is, of course, melting down, and it's been really kind of fun, actually, but fascinating to see how the mainstream media is blaming their own base, and suggestions are running everywhere from, now apparently men are misogynist and their own base is, racist. And that's the only reason, of course, that Kamala Harris did not win, is because their own party, and they're saying, of course, that Americans are sexist and racist. And it couldn't possibly be that Kamala Harris's worldview and the policies that she actually stood for didn't really resonate with most of the country. I mean, Donald Trump won a phenomenal mandate by not only having an electoral college landslide, but also winning the popular vote. But one of the clips that's been going around on social media, and I think encapsulated what the right feels incredibly well, is Scott Jennings on CNN, and he was on a panel with Van Jones, a couple of people, and they just sat there. Like, you have to actually watch this clip, and I'm going to play it for you in a second, and then we're going to bring on Steve Deace, who's our special guest this morning. But you have to actually watch this as well, because the rest of the leftists on the panel just sat there like, what do we say to this? But I think that he articulated so well what a lot of people in America have been feeling, being crushed by the left, being told that they're worthless, that their opinions don't matter. This is what he had to say about Trump's mandate.
This is a mandate. He's won the national popular vote. For the first time for a Republican, for the first time since 2004. This is a big deal. This isn't backing into the office. This is a mandate to do what you said you were going to do. Get the economy working again for regular working class Americans, fix immigration, try to get crime under control, try to reduce the chaos in the world. This is a mandate from the American people to do that. I think I'm interpreting the results tonight as the revenge of just the regular old working class American, the anonymous American who has been crushed, insulted, condescended to. They're not garbage. They're not Nazis. They're just regular people who get up and go to work every day and are trying to make a better life for their kids, and they feel like they have been told to just shut up when they have complained about the things that are hurting them in their own lives. I also feel like this election, as we sit here and pour over this tonight, is something of an indictment of the political information complex. I mean, we've been sitting around here for the last couple of weeks, and the story that was portrayed was not true. I mean, we were told Puerto Rico was going to change the election. Liz Cheney, Nikki Haley voters, women lying to their husbands. Before that, it was Tim Walz and the camo hats. Night after night after night, we were told all these things and gimmicks were going to somehow push Harris over the line, and we were just ignoring the fundamentals. Inflation, people feeling like that they were barely able to tread water at best. That was the fundamentals of the election. And so I think that both parties should always look at the results of an election and figure out what went right and what went wrong. But I think for all of us who cover elections and talk about elections and do this on a day-to-day basis, we have to figure out how to understand, talk to, and listen to the half of the country that rose up tonight and said, we've had enough.
So well said. All right, well, let's bring on Steve Deace, who is, of course, the host of the Steve Deace Show over at The Blaze. And Steve, I think that really did sum up well what a lot of us were feeling about the left, and especially about the Fourth Estate and the media complex that just absolutely got it wrong. I mean, this wasn't a close election. It was an absolute utter blowout for Donald Trump. What is your take on where we're at now and where the mainstream media should be in terms of some self-reflection, perhaps?
Well, the last time we talked about the election, there were two things and trends that I mentioned I wanted to take a look at, or two things, and then a third is something I predicted earlier this week before the election and to kick off our coverage on the Blaze on election night. And I'll start there because it's exactly what ended up happening, and that is that I did not think we were going to sit here and pour over the last few precincts of Wisconsin or Pennsylvania with some split verdict election, Jenna. And he's going to win a couple of these swing states and she's going to win a few of them. And so we're just trying to, it's Ohio in 2004 with Bush and Kerry. I didn't think that. And here's why. I was down in Dallas for almost a week for a conference and then for the Blaze. And Sunday I'm watching the Lions and I'm watching my Lions against the Packers on national TV. And every commercial break, and I mean every single one on one of the most watched programs in America, the Fox NFL Game of the Week, every commercial break back to back, it was just a matter of which order they ran. Every commercial break was either Senator Ted Cruz saved my daughter from a drug dealer coming across the border, from a creep claiming to be who feels pretty, from raping her in her locker room, or from some bearded lady act taking her place on the sports team away from her. Every ad was either that or Senator Ted Cruz will not let my daughter kill her children the way I was able to. Every ad. And that's the closing pitch of both sides the weekend before the election, which tells me there's no persuadable voters here. They're speaking to two diametrically opposite Americas. I mean, this is what a general does when he shapes a battlefield so that his soldiers have the best opportunity, he hopes, strategically to win on the day of the battle. That's what both sides are doing. And there's only one side's going to better respond to that to their own messaging. They're not going to have some swing at the end. And so I thought that the margins might be close, but one side then would pretty much have an overall trend line where it's clear that the energy is with them and their vision for the future, and that would carry forth in most, if not all, the swing states. Well, that's what ended up happening, and Trump ended up winning them all. A couple of trend lines I mentioned to you when we've talked about this over the last couple of months, that it was for the first time Trump was more popular than the Republican Party, that he had expanded his base. And kind of symbolic of that, the associations with RFK Jr., for example. Well, you saw this in the returns. I mean, Donald Trump won Hispanic men nationwide by 10 points. Won them by 10 points. He had the best finish ever with Hispanics by a Republican presidential candidate. And if we want to talk about paradigm shifts moving forward, stuff that'll be more than a moment. I want those of us who have been at this for quite a while. I want to go back a decade. I got a call one day from a senator named Marco Rubio who wants to run for president and wants my support in Iowa. And he wants to convince me that his association with the Gang of Eight is the right thing to do, and that if we don't provide mass amnesty to Hispanics, we'll lose them forever, like we lost the black vote over civil rights. And instead of voting 70% Democrat, they'll vote 90% Democrat, like the black population does. And they're having way more children, and so it'll be way more costly in the electoral map. And so we have to do this amnesty now, so that maybe one day we can get 40% of their vote, and they'll see we don't hate them. And I'm like, well, we won't even get to the future, Marco, because you just turned Texas into California, and the game is over right now in this generation. So I opposed him and the policy, and I didn't support him. Well, now, I mean, thoughts and prayers, and have Doughboy on Boys in the Hood pour one out for all the GOP consultants of the last, going back to McCain Kennedy, in 2005, when Bush came out and called us xenophobes, his own base, and Rush even pushed back on that. Well, here we are. I mean, Trump and Vance are literally running on a platform of mass deportations. That's literally their immigration platform. Mass deportations. They say it in every interview, every press, every rally they do, and they just broke the record for Hispanic voters. That just shatters the mythology of Connie and GOP consultants for the last 20 years. And so if you can win that level, and especially with the men, all right, if you can win that level of Hispanics on that messaging, then that entire canard has been exposed, and that's the greatest evidence of Trump expanding his base. And then the third is, I thought the decisive trend line in this election. There's a clear bifurcation, and there are people that are hardcore ideological conservatives who live in suburbs and are educated, and they moved out to the suburbs to get away from their cousin Eddie family members, and they're very uncomfortable with this. And I understand how I get that. I'm a human being. I get it. I live in the suburbs too. But what you're seeing now is that there's been the transformation, metamorphosis of the two parties is now complete. If you go to the last time the GOP won the popular vote, there would have been a bifurcation between non-college educated whites would have supported Democrats, college educated whites would have supported Republicans, and by huge margins on both sides. That inversion has done a total 180. It's inside out now. And now, the evangelical mobilization of the GOP looks more like a Pentecostal church where it's more ethnically and racially diverse, and it might be a Hispanic guy with a few tattoos from the life he lived 5 years ago who's on fire for Jesus, and a lot less like your suburban megachurch who can't get enough of John Piper's podcasts and has the non-denominational church, which really means it's Southern Baptist. It just doesn't want the stigma of being associated with it, but that's essentially what it is. Okay, those people are now voting for Kamala. And that's what's changed. She won white college graduates by 10 points. Trump is the first Republican ever to lose white college graduates. She won them by 10 points. The problem is, and the reason she got slaughtered nationwide, is Donald Trump won non-college graduate whites by 32 points. And non-college graduate whites actually showed up 39 to 32 over college-educated whites. That's the whole election right there. That's every trend line you saw in the Rust Belt. That's why the Rust Belt trend, where they all vote together since 1988, that's why that held firm. That is the whole election, is that right there, and that completes now the metamorphosis of the Republican Party. And there's going to be some people that are going to have to come to grips with the fact that it's not Reagan's America anymore. It's not 2004 anymore. And you're going to have to figure out if you can work within the confines of that Republican Party, or you're going to have to figure something else out. Because the idea now that everything's going to be, buttoned down and nice, Mike Pence nice and buttoned down, and we're going to have these like deep treatise conservative ideological writings of, the likes of Russell Kirk and Milton Friedman, who I love, okay, but then do nothing about them, of course. Do nothing about them for a generation. Do nothing. Win elections on them and then do nothing with them. But people want to be told that we're that kind of party because it makes them feel like they're ideologically superior. That whole era now is gone, and it's never coming back. And people are going to have to figure out whether or not some people are, and it's not an insignificant amount. I mean, for example, Trump's evangelical turnout went down. Trump had the lowest evangelical turnout, according to the exits we have so far, that any Republicans had since Romney got 22% in 2012. That was 22% of the electorate in 2012. Well, it was 22% of the electorate in the initial exits we have right now. 6 points less than the evangelical turnout that Trump received in 2020. Now, some of that's his own fault with his anemic pro-life messaging, but I guarantee you some of it is the fault of what I just mentioned. People uncomfortable with, well, that's just not who we are or how we talk or what we look like. There's a movie coming out this weekend, taking my daughter to it tonight because it was one of our favorite plays here in town when she was little. So even though she's married now, we still do daddy-daughter days. It's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Are you familiar with this story, Jenna? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's the Republican Party. Okay. Well, I mean, these kids smoke, they cuss a little. I don't know, do we really want them at our church play? It doesn't look as good. It doesn't, we might act like those people all year long, but at Christmas, of course, it's supposed to be formal, right? There is an element of that within evangelicalism. And that's what drives a lot of the John Pipers to post stupid crap like he did yesterday, where there's essentially a moral equivalency between what Trump represents for Christians and Kamala Harris. A lot of it is that, we just don't talk that way. I mean, we just don't act that way. I mean, our women just don't wear that kind of that level of makeup, and that's really what it is, if we're being honest. And that conversion and inversion now is complete. So you're going to have to get over it. Here we are.
Here we are indeed. And I think we're seeing kind of a repeat in a sense of Trump's 2016 victory, with the Republican establishment just being completely overwhelmed, and the consultants, this consultant class like the Karl Roves and all of those people just utterly getting it wrong. And I think we need to talk about, Steve, moving forward, how Christians have a responsibility to not repeat history. I mean, to learn from it and to actually move forward. And this is true, though, not just for kind of the antiquated GOP, and we've talked about that a lot, but also Trump himself, to not repeat some of the mistakes from 2016. Because what I'm seeing now in, the 48 hours that have passed is that a lot of people are comparing this to 2016 and the victory that was unprecedented and was surprising, quite frankly. But moving forward after 2016, there was a lot that kind of went off the rails or didn't get done as well as it could have. And so in terms of where Christians need to focus and where we can actually work within this new sort of populist system, I think we need to talk about what the Christian's responsibility is, and where do you see us engaging in this new administration come 2025?
Excellent question. Number one, I want to tell you, the conversations I've had with my little birdies around the country, and when you live in the First of the Nation caucus state, you meet a lot of people in national grassroots activism and presidential politics. So I've got pretty elaborate network. I will tell you, the conversations I'm having with people now compared to 2016, it's not even close. I know of major cabinet positions that they're already on their third round of interviews. They're way ahead of the game. Way ahead of the game. And you saw that, by the way, in the organization with the early vote, and I told you that was the X factor, and I did not know. And the way, if you wanted to win, make sure you send some flowers to people like Elon Musk, not just for what he did with Twitter, because if he doesn't do that, Donald Trump does not win again, no doubt. He's the Johannes Gutenberg of the 21st century. This is the new printing press that gets Luther's message out. But what he also invested on the ground in grassroots organization. Same thing with Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. I mean, Trump outsourced all this stuff to these third-party groups. I think you and I both know Trump well enough, Jenna, that if Trump had lost this election, he's blaming all of those people for not doing their jobs. He's not taking the blame. All right. So those people, their brands were on the line, taking over a political party's get out the vote effort. They delivered. And here's the thing, too. Think about this. This was their rookie effort. You have to think they're going to learn a lot of things they could have done better from this effort. They'll only get better at it in the future. So hats off to them. And that showed the amount of organization. Republicans, the way they performed in the early voting nationwide showed a way higher level of energy than anything we saw in the previous 2 years of off-year and special elections. You've heard me say to you the last couple of years how concerned I was that our base was demoralized. Well, these groups got our people out along with Trump's energy, of course. So the organization there, way ahead of the game. I will tell you, talking to birdies around the country, the level of engagement legally from the party and its legal groups led by Laura Trump, compared to Romney's Orca, or what went on under Ronna Romney McDaniel with challenging their lawfare, was way ahead of the game. One example, Georgia. Georgia started the same game last weekend that they did in the same counties. We're going to board up the windows, close the doors, count the votes in secret. That got out. They challenged that. They shut that down. So props to them for that. And then the level of organization within the transition team, they are just way ahead, and they have a plan. And so I don't think it's like that at all. I think they're way more prepared than they were in 2016. Frankly, as prepared as you would have hoped they would be. So I'm optimistic on that front. Now, you have to get in there and execute on a day-to-day basis, but organizationally, they're there. I think for Christians, you have to understand the signs of the times and the environment that you are in. And we cannot be like lefties who refuse to accept the world as it is. And so we just do this magical thinking and projection, and we want to govern the world as we want it to be and make a bunch of stupid mistakes. All right. Here is the reality of the people that are currently in charge of the political environment you want to operate in. They are not primarily ideologically driven. They're primarily transactionally driven. All right. Look at this as like you were renting an apartment. Okay. The landlord doesn't care how well you know the Westminster Confession of Faith. The landlord cares if you're going to pay him rent every month. And then if you pay your rent on time and you're a good tenant, you know what? You might think, yeah, that's an interesting thing on your wall, this Westminster Confession of Faith or this thing you're reading. Can you tell me more about it? But really his primary concern at first is, can I pay the rent? So this is not a Republican Party of the past where we're going to show our ideological bona fides and we're going to talk about how Russell Kirkian we are and speak in deep philosophical platitudes and, of course, activate on none of this stuff, but we're going to intellectually demonstrate our superiority. This is transactional. And if you can show that, this is what we saw with Trump the first time. He thought he needed a mass evangelical turnout to win, so he catered to us heavily and then delivered for us mightily as president on almost everything he could have possibly done, given what he was up against under his own party and consistent attempts at coups. Okay, and so now what's happened is after he gives us the thing we said we wanted for 50 years, overturning Roe, that whatever's called the pro-life movement just urinated that right down their leg and wasted it and kept losing everywhere. So we've lost leverage. And now he didn't pay any electoral penalty at all for running maybe the worst pro-life messaging of any Republican presidential nominee ever. He paid no penalty at all for that. So right now there's no incentive at all for him to do better. Okay, so guess who's going to have to create that incentive? We are. Okay, we are. And we're going to have to show. And here's the thing: that you can't cut your nose off to spite your face. You can't say, well, I'm okay with my daughter being raped by an illegal alien and maybe murdered because I don't like Trump's pro-life messaging. I mean, she's just as dead as your unborn daughter. That's stupidity. What you're going to have to do is show that our issue wins. And whoever these people now claiming to be pro-life leaders need to show, Jenna, they can do more than a march in January. They can do more than that. Okay, that they can actually get on the ground, roll their sleeves up, all right, compel a Republican governor in Missouri to get off his rear end and stop that abortion amendment so it doesn't lose by 1.5 points, all right, that they can actually do the work of a full-time governor in Florida maybe. Maybe they've got all this money they raise and all this stuff they do, that maybe they can be as successful when this is supposedly all they do as the governor of Florida can be in defeating, a kill 'em all amendment. You're going to need to show you have clout. Right now, we have none. And you need to look at this like the king's court. You don't have the king's attention. His attention is elsewhere. His attention is on things where his kingdom will expand and his Hellenistic message will go forth. All right. You don't have Alexander the Great's attention right now. All right. He'll tolerate you because you're still a significant population of his kingdom. But your advisors are not the ones speaking into his ear right now. And so for that to change, all right, you're going to have to show you have clout. And we're going to have to go out and start beating the baby killing industry in hand-to-hand combat, and not with stupid 15-week bills that we're never going to pass. And could arguably, the left could actually arguably use those things to roll back the stuff we've done in the States and say, you're right, Florida can't have a heartbeat bill anymore. This is the new standard.
We don't have the luxury right now of having the battles that we want to have when we have America in the position culturally that we wish that it was. And so for me, and I think you're absolutely right, Steve Deace, that this is just about controlling the border. This is about stopping the leftist agenda that took out fundamentally a lot of the American priorities over the last 4 years and even the 8 years of Obama. This, to me, is about getting back to square one. And if Christians are smart, we will start building toward 2028 right now and try through the next 4 years just to get back culturally to where we were at, conserve, so that then we can build out and move forward and have some actual victories. But so appreciate your comments, Steve Deace. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
As the world changes in an era of crisis, families throughout America are experiencing instability, fear, and great loss. While many are searching for answers in places of desperation, the position and mission of the church has never been more clear. It's time for us to leave the buildings and saturate the streets with redemptive hope and the love of Jesus. Saturate USA is a movement of churches and believers across America, uniting as one to reach every home with the love of the gospel. At saturateusa.org, you and your church can join the movement by adopting a zip code and receiving free neighborhood maps and evangelistic materials, including Jesus Film DVDs with free online streaming. Simply mobilize your volunteers, assemble your saturation packs with free materials and your own church's information, and then send out teams to distribute to homes. Let's partner together and see every zip code in America adopted for Christ. Join the movement at saturateusa.org.
If you are 65 or older, you know this. Inflation is hitting everyone hard right now, especially when it comes to health care. Over the last 10 years, healthcare costs have skyrocketed by, get this, 230%. If you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are still out-of-pocket expenses like deductibles and copayments, and they really add up. But here's some good news. MediShare 65 Plus is designed to fill in those gaps and help protect you from rising healthcare costs. At only $99 per month up to age 75, you get peace of mind at a price you can afford. And MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around 30 years. It's not some big impersonal thing. It's a community of people helping each other, business owners, pastors, retirees. People love it. MediShare 65 Plus just makes sense. To learn more, give them a call. They're great to talk to. They'll offer to pray with you each time you call, too. Call now, 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE, 833-45-BIBLE.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Stern. Stand by for news and commentary next. An Indiana sheriff has been ordered to remove a cross from his patrol car. A concerned citizen got triggered after seeing the cross decal on the rear windshield of a Hancock County sheriff's car. The Freedom from Religion Foundation said the presence of that cross on the patrol car shatters trust between officers and the public. Come on. They fired off a letter demanding that the decal be removed, and sure enough, the sheriff's department immediately removed the cross, even provided photographic evidence to the atheist group. Now, the out-of-town atheists were no doubt giddy over their victory, but there's one problem. It's not illegal for a cop or a sheriff's deputy to display a Christian message or a cross on their patrol cars. You know, it's really too bad the Hancock County Sheriff's Office fell for the bluff. Don't be bullied by atheist America. Come on. I'm Todd Stearns.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back, and we are talking about Trump's mandate. Having won even the popular vote, there is a clear mandate from America to return to greatness, to not go down the path of the leftist communist utopia. And I had posted this the day before Election Day. So this past Monday, the election is tomorrow, and I think it comes down to this. Trump will win if a majority of voters want a strong economy and strong borders. Kamala will win if a majority of voters want taxpayer-funded abortion on demand, free stuff, and to expand the LGBTQ social issues agenda. Pray for America. And I'm so grateful that the majority of voters want a strong economy and strong borders. So what does that mean for the new Congress? Well, Brandon Gill is a U.S. congressman-elect from Texas's 26th congressional district, and he is also husband to the lovely Danielle D'Souza, who, of course, is the daughter of our good friend Dinesh D'Souza. So with that introduction, Brandon, congratulations on your congressional win. And as you go to Congress, what do you consider the top priorities in working with, thankfully, a Trump administration rather than a Kamala Harris administration?
Well, Jenna, thanks for having me on, and it's great to hear from you. It was really a fantastic night Tuesday, and whenever we're thinking of top priorities, I think we've got to really take a step back and realize what the election was all about and what it means. If you look at the past several cycles, really probably the entirety of American history, you've never seen a bigger contrast between the two parties and between the two presidential candidates. On the one hand, we had a party that was running on a platform of basically attacking Republicans nonstop, running on a platform of mass infanticide, running on a platform of bigger government, more taxes, more regulations, and open borders. On the other hand, you had a party that was running on cutting government spending, bringing inflation down, cutting regulations, securing the border, and bringing prosperity back to the country. I mean, those couldn't be two more opposite visions for where this country should go. And whenever, you mentioned a mandate earlier, and I think that this is probably the most important thing that Republicans should remember going into this government. We won not only the popular vote with President Trump. President Trump won, it looks like, by about 5 million votes. He won the Electoral College. He won every single swing state. It looks like we're going to have a majority in the House. We took the Senate. I mean, this is as clear of a mandate as you can possibly have. And we've got to remember that voters sent us to Washington to do something. They sent us to secure the border, to reform our asylum laws, to deport illegal aliens, to cut spending, to bring inflation down, to fight back against the woke and weaponized administrative state. And these are things that we've got to deliver on. But I think the biggest thing to remember is this is a mandate from voters. And if we follow through, if we do what we said we were going to do, if we follow through with this mandate, I think we're going to get, we're going to have a good election cycle next cycle and the following cycle. But we've got to do what we said we were going to do. There's going to be a lot of calls, most likely, I think, from the left for, reconciliation and let's bring the country together. The left always says that whenever they lose. We've just got to remember that voters sent us here for a reason.
Yeah, so well said. And I hope that your fellow GOP majority in the House, it's looking like that's pretty solid, understands that and is willing, unlike in the first 2 years of the first administration in 2016 under Paul Ryan, really we're working against Trump. I hope that that the GOP majority will work with him for these priorities. Do you see the GOP coalition actually coalescing, or are there still some of those factions that that are more, kind of the Liz Cheney mentality, frankly?
Yeah, and I think that's so important. We came in 2016 and Republicans took power, and I think that there were large factions that either didn't like Trump or didn't think he was going to win, and we really were kind of caught flat-footed legislatively. From what I've seen, we couldn't be in a more different situation right now. I know, and I give credit to leadership for putting together a legislative agenda, again, on the border, on unleashing American energy, getting the economy back on track. And I think that, now in 2014, we're in a different world than we were in 2016. This is a different party in a very good way. I mean, and this is the party of Trump. And there's really nobody of any power who disagrees with that or who thinks that that's a bad thing. I think that everybody realizes that Trump made the Republican Party the party of the working class. I sincerely think that the Republican Party is nationally viable almost solely because of Trump, because he brought in so many different people into the party that we needed and made us electorally viable. So one of the great things, I think, is that I think that there is a lot of actual unity in the Republican Party right now to get the Trump agenda passed. I mean, all of the things that you think of whenever you think of President Trump are things that all Republicans ran on. They're the things that we've been talking about for months. So I'm really excited because I think that there is a lot of support and a lot of unity for the Trump agenda.
That's really encouraging to hear, and I hope that ultimately is the outcome, and that the GOP majority in the House and the Senate is going to go to Washington, see that mandate, and be willing to work all together with the trifecta. Of course, the U.S. Senate leadership election is coming up, I think, on the 18th, so that's going to be a really clear indication, I think, of where the Senate and at least the GOP majority there is their mindset is in terms of working with Trump and that agenda and that mandate. But Representative Brandon Gill, Representative-elect, looking forward to seeing the work and the talent that you bring to Washington. We'll be praying for you, praying for the new Congress. Thanks so much for joining. You can follow him at Real Brandon Gill on X, and we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Hey, if your travels for work or pleasure take you out of town, take AFR with you. You may already know you can listen to the AFR app on your phone, but wait, there's more. If your vehicle is equipped with Apple CarPlay, it can open the AFR app directly. That means you get easier control, and that means it's safer. Safer to use so you can stay informed on what you need to know to keep your family safe. And if you don't already have the AFR app, get it today. It's always free in the App Store.
Hi, I'm Tim Moore, Senior Evangelist on Christ in Prophecy. With all the uncertainty in the world today, it's good to know that God's promises never change. On Christ in Prophecy, we'll examine the signs of the times and consider what's really happening in the world today through the lens of God's prophetic word. To hear more biblical hope for the future, join me for Christ in Prophecy, Sundays at 11 a.m. Central, right here on American Family Radio, and find out what's really going on in the world.
As Christians, how can we even begin to impact others when we live in a culture where truth is relative? It all starts with God's Word. Join us for Activate Summit 2025 at Cadence Bank Conference Center in Tupelo, Mississippi, June 12th through the 14th, 2025. The theme is Biblical Bedrock, building on the authority of Scripture, and it's designed to help you acknowledge the Bible's authority and submit to the clear teaching of Scripture. Hear from Frank Turek.
Evolution describes what does behave, not what ought to behave, right? It doesn't give you oughts, it just gives you what does happen.
Todd Herman.
God always uses evil for good. He is very intentional, and He intentionally chose you to live through times such as these.
And more. The main sessions are for ages 13 and up, while Activate Kids is a separate track for ages 6 through 12. Register for Activate Summit 2025 by visiting activate.afa.net/summit. Enter code EARLYBIRD20 at checkout for 20% off tickets before January 1st.
Hello, this is Edward Graham, and I've got a great idea for you this Christmas. Through Operation Christmas Child, you can share hope with a child in need. Fill a shoebox with toys, school supplies, and hygiene items. Add your picture and an encouraging note. We'll deliver your shoebox gift to a child alongside the greatest gift of all, the good news of Jesus Christ.
Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to get involved. That's SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. Send joy to a child in need with Operation Christmas Child. Simply pack a shoebox with fun toys, school supplies, and hygiene items. Then bring it to a drop-off location during National Collection Week, November 18th through the 25th. You can also build a shoebox online. And the best part is the good news of Jesus Christ is shared alongside your gift. And each child is given the opportunity to participate in a life-changing discipleship program. Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to learn more.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And so we'll be talking about, of course, the landslide Trump victory, but also we need to talk about how some of these state initiatives have done. Yesterday, if you missed it, we had Father Frank Pavone with Priests for Life talking about all of the abortion referendums and how that went. So you can always find Jenna Ellis in the Morning and our previous shows at afr.net. Click on the icon for Jenna Ellis in the Morning. But how did the election integrity initiatives do? Some of them were good, some of them not so good. So how is election integrity across the country? Let's welcome in Cleta Mitchell, who is the Senior Legal Fellow for the Conservative Partnership Institute and the founder of the Election Integrity Network. So, Cleta, you have been very engaged over the last 4 years on election integrity, and so you have been paying attention, of course, to a lot of these initiatives around the states. And it seems like some of the states actually did better this time, not really including Arizona. I think a lot of us were laughing at them, unfortunately. But overall, what does the landscape look like? And good morning.
Good morning, Jenna. Actually, interestingly enough, the voters were very discerning about these election-related ballot issues. And let's start with this convoluted voting system that was thought up by some left-wing billionaires, and it was foisted on some unsuspecting people in Maine and Alaska through the initiative petition, and people were told, this is a way to get rid of dark money in politics, which of course had nothing to do with anything related to campaign finance. But this is a very convoluted system, which I don't even want to begin to try to explain. But Alaskans were tricked into approving it in 2022, experienced it in 2023, and this year they repealed ranked choice voting. And in fact, it was defeated in every state where it was on the ballot. Every statewide ballot, ranked choice voting went down. And the most interesting thing that you need to know is that in Alaska, little Alaska, the proponents spent just under $523,000 talking about why it was important to repeal ranked choice voting. The left-wing money that poured into that state to keep it, to oppose repeal, spent $14 million in Alaska, and they lost. I think that is the most interesting thing to me. These ballot issues are supported by these left-wing billionaires, and I'm not just saying that in a hyperbolic manner. It is the fact. And if you want to know the facts, you can go to ballotpedia.org, and you can see exactly how much was spent. And we were outspent 40-1, 50-1 in all of these states. There were 8 states that adopted constitutional amendments that provide that only U.S. citizens can vote in any election in their state, which is important because a lot of these left-wing groups in blue cities and towns have been putting ranked choice voting and allowing citizens to vote, non-citizens to vote in local elections all over the country. And so by having a statewide constitutional amendment that forecloses the ability of these Democrat-held local councils and commissions to be able to allow non-citizens to vote in those communities, and then to also create these very bizarre ranked choice voting, top 5. Just think California. If you want to know really what this is about, just think California. But finally, Jenna, the most interesting one to me was your home state of Colorado, which, as we know, has just been taken over by the left and by Democrats, and with a very specific plan 20 years ago to take over the state. And they changed the voting process to make it really very, very difficult for a Republican or a conservative to ever win again statewide. But even in Colorado, the voters knew better, and they voted against the ranked choice voting amendment. So it was a pretty good day for election integrity, I have to say.
That's really encouraging, and especially in Colorado, when there's been a lot of drama even leading up to the election with the Secretary of State, and we'll see how some of those lawsuits go, and whether or not she actually resigns. But also some people on social media have been posting kind of an interesting stat. And this is coming from someone over at Timcast with, of course, Tim Pool's network, saying Kamala won every single state that doesn't require voter ID, and she didn't win a single state that does require it. It's insane that this is just being ignored. And so I think that's just an interesting view of the electoral map. And so, where are we at, especially with this new trifecta in terms of possibly getting things like the SAVE Act passed and, some of these other things nationally that would be good for election integrity?
Well, it's funny you'd ask that, Jenna, because I really have this, the left and the New York Times and these media outlets have made fun of me. They've ridiculed me repeatedly because I said that in January of this year, I felt as though God put on my heart that I needed to really focus on non-citizen voting, and people have made fun of me for that. But you and I both know, anyone of faith knows that there are things that God puts on your heart, and so something you've never thought about, and then He just keeps putting things in front of you and putting things in front of you. And so the thing He has been really putting on my heart is that we have this, and the more I've thought about it and the more I've looked at it, the more I've realized why He's putting this on my heart, is that we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity with this trifecta to overhaul and update and change the 3 federal laws that have wreaked havoc on our election system. This is not federalizing elections. This is fixing 3 laws that have completely undermined the integrity of our elections for over 30 years. And it is what has led to the threat of non-citizen voting. It's led to the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, Bill Clinton's number one bill that he proposed when he was elected president and took office in '93, which is the motor voter. It's why everybody registers to vote at the DMV. It has created a mess in the voter rolls. It's created opportunities for non-citizens to be added to the voter rolls. We have to overhaul that. The Help America Vote Act, this is the opportunity for us 22 years after it was passed following the 2000 presidential election. It's the opportunity to make certain that before anybody is added to the voter rolls, not only the law now requires confirming identity and residency, we can add and confirming citizenship prior to the time when somebody is added to the voter rolls. We have to overhaul that. And it also gives us the opportunity to put real standards and requirements on voting machines, and to say that, people have been saying they want paper ballots hand marked. And I think we have to really look at what systems are being used, and are they subject or susceptible to being tampered with or badly or programmed by bad actors. And so I think that this is the opportunity to look at that. I think we have to look at that. One thing to have paper ballots tabulated by some sort of mechanical or electronic machine, but you have to have the paper ballot backup. You have to be able to confirm the numbers, that the numbers that the machine shows were tabulated. You have the paper backup to be able to count those, make sure those numbers match. These are all things that the Congress has broken, and it's time for Congress to fix. And the third one is this UOCAVA, this Overseas Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. We need to separate civilians from military. Those need to be 2 separate statutes, because what the Democrats have done and the left-wing groups have done is they are now using that. And so the military portion of the overseas voting is shrinking and shrinking. And the overseas non-military voting has taken over, and it is totally unregulated. We are seeing people who don't have any attachment to any state being able to vote by email. They don't have to prove they're citizens. They don't have to prove they're even out of state. We saw Planned Parenthood in Oregon and other places using UOCAVA to get people registered who'd missed the deadline by saying that they were overseas when they weren't. So Congress has work to do, and that's what I think we have to have a fundamental reform of the federal laws that govern elections, so that we don't ever experience again what happened in 2020, that we don't have to sweat it so much every 4 years, every 2 years, because of the threats to our system that are caused by these very flawed federal statutes.
Well, and to your point, Cleta, and I think it's such a good one, this isn't federalizing the elections and taking away the obligation and the power that the Constitution rightly provides to state legislatures, but ensuring that some, basic things like citizenship and voter ID are implemented. And so with this, I mean, I know that Speaker Mike Johnson has advocated very strongly while he was just a member of Congress and then in GOP leadership, but even as the speaker for things like the SAVE Act for voter ID and so forth. Do you think that this is a priority as well for President Trump and his administration, given, some of the, we'll just call it diversity of opinion among even, some of the GOP and the RNC since 2020 in terms of, some of the election integrity ideas?
Well, I have, look, the president has campaigned about this. And, but I think when I say that God's put this on my heart, I think what I'm seeing is the path forward to how to do it. And I had not ever really thought about that really until the last 10 days or so, last couple of weeks. And just every day I think of more things and finally realized that we have to do it. And I have asked the speaker. I'm pretty bold about asking people. And the speaker is given every new Congress, the first 10 bill numbers belong to the speaker. And he can choose what those bills are going to be. And interestingly, Nancy Pelosi, every time she became speaker after losing the House, and then when the Democrats regained the House and she was speaker, H.R. 1, the speaker's H.R. 1 has been a political process bill, whether it was lobbying, the lobbying laws back in 2007, when the Democrats retook the House in 2019, H.R. 1 was a bill to federalize the elections. It was a bill that would have done every single thing that those of us who believe in election integrity would oppose. And I think that H.R. 1 it's really hard to get Republicans to think of political process as a top priority, but I've already started asking, and I've asked the speaker several times. He hasn't answered me yet. So I may need to come back, Jenna, and get some help from all of your listeners. Because
hey, call the speaker's office. Tell him.
Call the speaker's office. HR. Look, I'll be happy to have it in the top 5, but or the top 10. But we have to make election reform a fundamental priority because that's what the left does. They change the rules to make it easier for them to win and harder for us to win. And I don't think anybody believes that it would be a good idea to say, for instance, that the rules for the Super Bowl should favor one team or the other. That's no fun, and that's not fair. And the left sits around and thinks up ways that they can manipulate the election process, the rules of the game, in order to help them win. And we have to put a stop to that. It's just time to put a stop to it.
Yeah, so well said, Cleta Mitchell, and I'm so appreciative of all of the work that you've done and the entire election integrity group over the last 4 years, making these priorities and implementing them, where we can, and in just ensuring that the process is fair, because that should not be a partisan issue. That should be something that we all recognize in a free and fair election process. Everybody knows the rules, everybody plays by the rules, and then the outcome is what it is. As you said, it doesn't favor one side or the other. And so, as we now have this time period between now and the presidential transition, in January, what can people who are listening do other than calling the speaker's office, to ensure that some of these things are a priority in the next Congress and the upcoming Trump administration? In just the last minute we have.
Well, I do think that calling the speaker's office, 202-225-3121, I think people should call the speaker's office and say, make election reform a priority. And talk to your state, talk to your U.S. House member. Everybody's got a U.S. congressman. Call your congressman. Text your congressman. Call the office and say, we want Congress to act to shore up the election, to ensure the integrity of the elections. And then I would urge people to visit our website, www.whoscounting.us. And if you're interested in participating in a state coalition, there's plenty of work to do. I think one of the ways we stopped them was that there were just thousands of people spending a lot of time at their local election offices, looking at voter rolls, studying, doing things, going to meetings.
We all got to get involved. And we'll have to leave it there. Cleta Mitchell, so appreciate it. And you can always reach me and my team, Jenna, at afr.net. Get involved.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family